Thank you for joining us today. We're going to hear from two presenters today. The first is going to be Skye, and then the second is going to be Alysha, and they're going to talk to you today about kelp. So I'm going to pass it over to Skye.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Skye Steritz. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Mount Eccles. I'm also a kelp farmer. So my husband, Sean, and I started Noble Ocean Farms in early 2020. And yeah, so today this presentation is going to be more about kelp farming than kelp itself, unless people tell me they really want to hear about kelp as an organism. Then I can try and pivot and talk more about that. But I have done presentations at the school that focus more on what is kelp. We'll do a really brief overview of that, but mostly today I'm going to be talking about the research that we're doing this year to compare different gear configurations that we use in kelp farming. And yeah, so why did we start our kelp farm in the first place? We have similar goals as folks in this bi-coastal kelp farming movement, I'll call it. People on the East Coast, people on the West Coast, especially in Alaska. A lot of us are farming kelp because we want to build food security, especially in rural coastal communities. That was Sean and I's #1 goal, as represented by this miso soup made by my friend with sugar kelp. Also to help build habitat for fish, build ecosystem resilience in general in our marine environment, and diversify coastal economies. Those are some of our goals. So really quick, I just wanted to ask in the beginning, what brought you here tonight? And a few people wanted to shout out or share. If you have any questions about kelp or kelp farming, I can try to address them while I'm talking. I'm just curious what people's interests are. Anybody actually want to be a kelp farmer? You're just curious.
It's my Tuesday night date night.
All right, I love it.
Oh, but I consider going farming.
But we have a farm, yeah. Interesting. And we went to split.
Cool. Thanks
I'm
for
more
coming.
familiar with Southeast. How much active kelp farming, commercial kelp farming is there in Eastern South?
So we have 3 active commercial farms this year. There have been 4 in the past couple of years, but this year just 3. Yeah. And anybody who's online, feel free to ask questions or also speak up if you'd like to know something specific about kelp farming. So this is just a brief overview of what is seaweed. A lot of people refer to it as an aquatic plant, but it's actually a macroalgae. Right, so a large type of algae. All seaweeds are macroalgae. We have over 500 species of seaweed in Alaska, but kelp are just the large brown seaweeds, so, of which there are about 30 different species in the world. But ocean farmers in Alaska were focused on 3 species. So those are sugar kelp, ribbon kelp, and bull kelp, although there are people starting to try some other species. Sugar kelp is the one that's mainly been farmed in the United States so far. It's similar to kombu, which people know if they like to cook, people might have heard of kombu. And so East Coast farmers started farming sugar kelp. And then our first kelp farms in Alaska were in 2017, also focused on sugar kelp mainly because that's what's been done. But there are so many different species that we could actually be exploring, and other types of seaweeds too, besides kelp that we could be growing. Again, this is what we're focused on right now, sugar kelp. And that's sugar kelp in the picture too. You've probably seen it on the beaches. So when we first submitted our permit, it took about a year to get permitted and then start farming. So we are coming up on our 3rd harvest season. We actually took a year off because we moved sites. We realized that our original site was not a great site for kelp farming because there was ice in the back of that bay. It was especially icy year, and we're like, we don't want to deal with the ice anymore. So we moved out of the back of Simpson Bay closer to the entrance. But this is a little bit of a calendar of a kelp farmer's year. So in the fall, the first step is that we have to collect wild sori, which are the fertile reproductive material of the wild kelps. And Fish and Game's regulations are that we collect from at least 50 different parent stock or 50 different organisms just to maintain genetic diversity. And we have to collect it within a 50-kilometer radius from our farm site. So it's called the 50-50 rule. And they do that to maintain genetic diversity and just make sure that we're not farming anything that doesn't naturally grow here, basically, which makes sense to us. So we, you can dive or you can just snorkel. We did just snorkel, and we go and collect the sori, and then we send it to a nursery, and it has to grow in the nursery for about 6 weeks, but it's still super tiny when we get it back. It's only about 2 millimeters long. So they send it back to us, and in the meantime, we've been deploying our gear, and then we go out there and we plant the farm. That's usually around Halloween, like late October, early November. And then this time of year, we're just monitoring. We're going out and we're checking our gear, doing some maintenance, adjusting line tension, things like that. We're monitoring growth, but we don't end up harvesting until April or May. And a lot of people are surprised by that it's actually a winter crop. They're like, oh, you're going to be busy in the summer with kelp farming. Nope, we're not. We are done harvesting by the end of May. So then we remove our gear and we clean all our lines, and then July, August, we're doing our gear work again, getting ready to put things back out on the farm. Yes.
So where is it that you send it to a nursery, and why do you do that?
Great question. So we have been working with Alutiiq Pride Marine Institute in Seward primarily, and Alysha is working on getting a nursery going here in Cordova so that we don't have to send it anywhere, that it'll be actually here at the Science Center in the future.
Like so even in where it's there in Seward, it's inside a building?
It's inside a building. It's actually in aquariums. I should have put some photos of that, but it's in these big aquariums, and it's on PVC pipe that's wrapped with string. And so when we send them the fertile reproductive material, the sorus tissue, they are able to inoculate it, and it stimulates them to send out all their little spores, and they settle kind of like mushrooms. They just settle whatever substrate is available. So it lands on the string, and that's where it starts growing. So then when we plant, we're unraveling that string around our lines, securing it as we go. Yeah, good question. So we've had challenges in our first few years of farming, not being quite sure what the right gear configurations are. So that's been one of our biggest struggles. And so that led us to these questions of how do we grow the largest amount of kelp in the smallest footprint, the smallest amount of ocean space, and what type of array should we use? And when I say array during this presentation, I just mean an underwater system of anchors, lines, buoys, and connection points. So a lot of us farmers, we use sea links or seine rings as our connection points, and you'll see more diagrams throughout the slides of what different ways that you can set up your arrays. So we weren't exactly sure what the best way is when we started farming, and we ended up working with an engineer on the East Coast to get this grant so that we could test a couple different array types and compare like the costs of each one and the different pros and cons and if they are equally productive or not. So that's what I'm going to talk about mainly today. So these are our research objectives for the project that we're working on this season. Determining the efficiency of each of these 3 kelp farming arrays in terms of biomass, and then characterizing the pros and cons, looking at what are the challenges of installing and maintaining, and what are the costs, kind of like I mentioned. So I'm going to take you through each of these array types, and each of these diagrams are done by that engineer that we're working with. His name's Cliff Gowdy. So this is the most basic of the array types that we would recommend, and what was recommended to us as the right way to start is just a single line array. So you have this single row line, and you have 2 anchors at each end, right? And then this doesn't show the tag lines, but you also have tag lines going up from those anchors that allow you to adjust the anchor. So this is the most simple and straightforward way. And with Fish and Game, you can also get a research permit that allows you to do a single line if you're not ready to go through the full permitting process to do a commercial farm. So you can do a single line and kind of like test out a site and see if it is a good site for a kelp farm. So the most basic one, but we had trouble our first year with keeping the single line tensioned because it's just one line, right? Whereas these other systems, they're a rectangular system. They're a rectangular array, which allows you to keep it better tensioned. So we had a little bit of a challenge with the single line the first year, but pretty straightforward system in general. But it's not the most efficient use of space. So that's why these other 2 array types have been developed to try to maximize the amount of space, because you're also paying the state. Your lease fee is based on your acreage. So if you're leasing, 3-4 acres from the state, you're paying X amount of dollars to the state each year. But if you're paying 20, or you're leasing 20 acres, you're paying a lot more annually. So
What kind of kelp is that?
that's sugar kelp too, actually. Yeah.
But is it a cost per acre?
It is a cost per acre. Do you remember what it is, Sean? It's like there's a flat rate, and then there's a formula, and then it's like beyond X acres, I think it's like $250 per acre. But we pay $3,200 to the state every year for a 22-acre lease. So this is the 5-line array system. So this is building on the single line. It allows you to have more lines in the water, but you're still, you can save a little bit of money because you still just have 2 anchors, but you have more lines in the water. The thing about the 5-line system is that it uses these aluminum spreader bars. So the spreader bars are helpful in keeping the line. They're only, 2.5 feet apart, right? They're only 2.5 feet apart, each of those lines. And we've had pretty good success with them not getting tangled using this spreader bar system. But of course, to get anything welded in rural Alaska is expensive. So we had to get these specially welded, but you could probably come up with something more creative. And I think some people have just used wood, right? So PVC pipe and things like that. So we were recommended to use aluminum bars. We went for it, but you could probably find a cheaper way to do that too. And we've had a lot of success with these in general, but they can flip on you and then wreak havoc. So that's one of the cons of the 5-line array system. And then, this is the 5-line in action. This is a picture of when we were planting. So just this year, we were taught a system in which you're able to unravel your seed string 5 at a time using vice grips, basically attached to the side of the boat. It takes a little bit of coordination, but before we were doing each one by hand. And so now we can do it 5 times faster with using the vice grips attached to the side of the boat. And then you're pulling yourself along with the other lines on the other side of the boat as those strings are unraveling. And the idea is that the hold fast will transfer from the string onto your grow line. So throughout the season, so it won't be.
So you're wrapping the string around the line?
Exactly, yep.
Okay.
So this is the grow line going through
Yeah.
the PVC
And
pipe,
then
yeah.
you just wrap that string as you go out. So those are pretty long strings.
Yes, yep.
You,
Mhm.
you tie one end of the spool to like the end of the grow line, and then as you pull yourself along on the farm, like the lines just go through the spool, and it automatically is just like unraveling over it.
And you
Oh,
can-
so you
Like
just
a
hold
spool of bread.
the spool on end so it comes off the end of the spool?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then you kind of secure as you go just to make sure that it's not drooping too much, so it's staying tight.
And is
to
there a
the grow
set
line.
distance from the surface that you're set?
Yeah, also a good question. Yeah, so we're aiming with sugar kelp for about 7 feet
Okay.
below the surface, just based on kind of the Goldilocks zone that species wants in terms of, sunlight, but also enough minerals, and don't want them to get too close to the top and get bleached out. But some other species like ribbon kelp, they say is more like 5 feet. So, yeah. And then this is the catenary array system. His diagram says 20,000 feet. The one that we have looks like this, but it's 10,000 feet. So this is obviously the most complex of the 3 systems. It's kind of intimidating at first, but it allows you to put a lot of grow lines in a small amount of space, basically. And Corey, you're using one of these too this year. So, yeah, so we both got these catenary array systems from the same engineer that basically had it set up. We still have to do some splicing and things like that, but it's kind of like a kelp farm in a bag. Like it comes and you have to lay it out, stretch it all out, get some things hooked up, but then you can put it back in the bag, and 2 boats working together, you're basically, one boat takes 2 ends, the other boat take the other 2 ends, and you're spreading it out, and yeah.
So is that a
Connecting it
1.5
in.
foot line spacing?
Sorry,
Is that a 1.5 foot line spacing?
what do we have?
I think it's 3 feet.
3 feet. So you got my gear experts in the room. But that's what it looks like laid out in our boatyard. 3 feet apart. There we go. Yep. And these lines on the end, the curve this is the catenary line, is used for framing and tensioning, and that's where it gets its name, the catenary array.
What does that word mean?
Good question.
The catenary factor of a line under tension is the amount of droop you get in the line.
Yeah, there's some mathematical formula that he uses. Like you want this kind of like hyperbolic curve that helps keep. So these lines in the middle are shorter distance, but it's helping the whole thing to maintain tension.
So the less catenary factor you have, the more tension you have on the line. So the stronger your line has to be to fight that line tension.
Awesome. Thank you. It's a collaborative discussion.
It's a similar concept to a suspension bridge.
So this some of the data that we've collected. You can see that the catenary array, yes, it's more complicated, but the cost of gear per foot of line is much lower than if you do a single line array. It's also, even with the fact that a lot of it comes in the bag, there's still more labor time to assemble it. It's expensive to ship all the line and everything here, but it does stay very well tensioned. So, and just a note at the bottom that, every year we've also hired seiners and larger vessels to help us deploy anchors and arrays. So,
I had a question.
Yeah.
So your spreader bar for the 5-line array.
Mhm.
So that's about 15 feet long.
they're 10 feet, right, Sean?
They're 10.
10 feet, yeah.
But you could make them 15 feet.
But I mean, if you made it longer, there'd be less tendency to have it flip on there. Or maybe if you anchored it a little
A
better,
little differently, yeah.
then it wouldn't be flipping.
Is it anchored on the corners on that design, or?
That one only has 2 anchors, so,
One
yeah.
on each end.
So it's like, on each end.
There's a bridle on like the ends of the
Yeah,
bar.
that's
Right.
where
The center.
Yeah.
you need to double your anchors.
Maybe we need to double the
If you
anchors,
had- If you had 4 anchors, it wouldn't
It
flip
wouldn't
on you at
flip.
all.
right?
Yeah.
It's just expensive. Buying those extra anchors. But yeah.
How heavy of an anchor?
Yeah,
you
how
put?
heavy are the anchors you're using?
Those ones are 800-pound railroad wheels.
Oh, that's.
Oh.
And we
That's
also have
a
like
significant
ground
anchor.
dampers.
Yeah, the Danforths are
Really?
That's a
more
significant
expensive.
size.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of kelp. It's way, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It gets really heavy. It gets really
Yeah,
heavy throughout the season, yeah.
The only time that I think it's ever like flipped was when we were at the side of the boat. It never like flipped in a storm or anything like that. Like the anchors never drug or anything like that. It was just that, yeah, the deployment of it and like when you're trying to handle it on the side, we found that it's a lot easier to use. In the photo, there was a picture of like a single buoy on a bridle. We found that it's much better to have 2 buoys, one on each end of the bar. That way, like if you're lifting up one end of the bar, it doesn't want to flip over on you. Whereas if you're trying to bring up the bar all at once and it's on a single buoy pick point, the whole bar and system kind of wants to just flip. And then it's kind of just unruly to deal with like a 10-foot bar with all these lines all at once and dealing with waves and current tides and stuff. It's hard to manage sometimes.
The anchor selection was also a big part of our research in the beginning. It was like, you can get these railroad wheels from the Alaska Railroad Company, they're pretty cheap, but then you have to get some little fins welded on the bottom to try to make sure they're digging into the mud, not just sliding across on the bottom. So anyways, yeah, a lot of
Can
gear
you leave the
considerations.
anchors in, or do you
Yeah,
have to-
The anchors can stay in, yep. Yeah, take the lines out, leave the anchors in, yeah. Okay, so yeah, just a little bit more of what's going into assembly, a lot of line splicing, things like that. And then deployment, this is deploying the catenary array. So this is some growth data from this month. Right now, the single line array is actually doing the best in terms of productivity of kelp growth, but we attribute that more. We think it's actually more due to the seed quality that we receive, because the seed quality that we receive is very variable. And so we track, which lines got the best seed and try to spread it out on the different arrays, but it's still like, yeah, if your seed has any issues or is not like full of sporophytes, then those are the lines that are covered in diatoms and mucus and not kelp right now. So there are some lines like that. I'd say we have probably like between 20 and 30% of our lines that are hardly growing any kelp, and then some other ones that look amazing. So I guess that's part of any farming. You have some line failure. This shows you just like, yeah, some of the spools we receive look like this. That's contaminated with another type of algae that we don't want to grow. The healthy spools are covered in brown sporophytes like this. I mean, this one actually is not 100% covered either. I've seen photos of ones on the East Coast where they're just like a carpet of brown. So that's really what you're going for, but it's not easy for these nurseries to keep algae, other types of algae out when they're using saltwater pumps and, they're taking in seawater. So it's kind of tricky. So we understand that they're doing their best, but that I think is actually the main factor that contributes to which lines are the most productive is actually the seed quality. So yeah.
Sorry, the difference in productivity between the different systems, do you think that had to do with like the water depth that it suspended at, or the amount of light that got in, or just seasonal differences?
I think the depth can have, we have seen that for sure on our farm in the past, even on a single line, the center will start drooping, right? And so we've seen that the two ends are like dense with growth and then nothing for 100 feet, and then dense with growth at the end that's up by the sun, right? So that's also why we need buoys, why we have to put in more buoys throughout the season. It's like keep those lines up closer to the sun so that you you can have more even growth, but I do think depth is a factor. And I just wanted to give a few updates about what's going on in the industry locally. So this year we do have a new market, Cascadia Seaweed. They're based out of British Columbia, and they want all the kelp we can grow, which is the first time ever we've had a market like that. All in past years, we've been hustling, sending kelp, doing dock sales, and also sending kelp out to like 50 small buyers, and having to track all those communications and stuff is pretty time consuming.
Where are they based in DC?
Is it Victoria or Vancouver?
Prince Rupert.
Prince Rupert, okay.
Oh, that's even closer.
Yeah, so they are making a liquid fertilizer out of kelp, and they've been selling their product to land-based farmers along the West Coast, California, and other places who are having great results with this kelp fertilizer. So now they're scaling their production. They want more and more kelp. They want 1 million pounds from Alaska. They want more than we can grow in Prince William Sound, which is a good problem to have. It's a lower price point than if we were selling it for human food, but it's still along the same lines of our food security mission in a way. And we just look at this and we're like, okay, this industry is never going to be able to stay sustained if we don't find a market like this that can take at least the bulk of our biomass, and we still would like to use a smaller percentage of the kelp for human food and experimenting with dried kelp products and things like that. But we need someone to take the bulk of it, and that's what Cascadia is going to be for us this year. Also, Kristen, if you want to share anything about this, we're super excited. There's a pilot kelp processing line coming soon to Cordova, big rotary drum dryer. That's going to be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the big conundrum I think that a lot of kelp farmers have been wrestling with is how do we get this to market? If you're talking about huge quantities with what Skye is talking about for biostimulants, and you don't dry it, that's a lot of wet, heavy kelp.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, and I think for a lot of food grade markets, they do want dried kelp.
Yes.
They want like flakes or something that you can then either grind even more finely to put into a food product or use it in some other human consumption product. So yeah, so we've been working on getting grant money to buy a shredder, a dryer, a screw press, maybe a hammer mill, and some other equipment like conveyors and ideally a forklift, but all the things you need to move around something very wet and heavy, and get it into the dryer and out of the dryer. So yeah, so we're hoping we will be having the dryer coming in the next couple of months, I think, but we're just gonna miss being able to process this spring, so we'll be ready for 2026.
Yeah, we'll be super ready.
We're gonna work for the first year or two out at Orca Cannery. They've got a processing space that is DEC approved, and we have been working on getting organic certification because the kelp farmers want to sell organic, and it has to be organic on the farm and organic where it's processed and organic in the packaging. So it's that whole chain of custody.
Yeah.
Just the first year, Kristen, do you have plans to move it from there?
Well, ultimately, yeah, we're working on getting a shared seafood processing plant going. It's our dream. Yes. And then kelp processing would happen there. So, yeah.
Is that a private company doing that? Is that the city?
So the Prince William Sound Economic Development District is a nonprofit, and we work with, our geographic region is the Sound, so we work with Chenega, Titlik, Valdez, Whittier, and Cordova. And we are open to helping mariculture, kelp farmers and shellfish farmers all over the Sound. We happen to have a concentration of them here. We have people in Valdez who really want to get involved in processing, but they don't have kelp farmers. There's some oyster farming happening here, and then Chenega is, I guess, has gotten a big farm permitted, a big oyster farm permitted. So they're going to be getting into oyster farming. Yeah, so trying to catalyze it in a few different ways, and yeah, I think a lot of people, when they started, I know Taya has said that she said, when I first started kelp farming, I thought I would sell it across the dock just like I sell my salmon. But the processors aren't really interested in investing in figuring out kelp processing until they see there's a real market.
Yeah.
And the markets are coming to buy because there's not enough kelp. And the farmers can't grow more kelp because they don't have a market. So
Chicken and egg.
Yeah. Right. So
Exactly.
we're really trying to bust out of that.
Yeah.
That recirculating wave and,
Yeah.
get some traction.
Yep, absolutely. And so, yeah, the processing piece has been one of our biggest hurdles because kelp has to be stabilized within 24 to 48 hours of being pulled out of the ocean in order for it not to start decaying. So even if it's used for fertilizer, we still have to use a reagent and get it stabilized. So
So why do you use a what agent?
there's a reagent, like an acid that stabilizes it. So
What does that mean, stabilizing?
so it doesn't
Reduce the
decompose.
pH
Yeah.
to where it won't biodegrade. So like,
So it's
Yeah.
stabilized in a solution. So it's not dry, but it's not gonna continue to decompose. So you can ship it, it still has,
Is it a chemical or?
Yeah,
like citric acid,
citric
that's
acid.
one of the, citric acid is one reagent, there's other kinds.
Does it keep the same color then, or does it? I think so.
I think it keeps the same color with the reagent.
people
But-
are using citric acids and still producing food grade seaweed products as well. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just reducing the pH to where it's not gonna get all funky and basically start to ferment.
So yeah, you could stabilize it by drying it, by blanching it, by freezing it, by using a reagent like that, but you have to stabilize it in some way within 24 to 48 hours. So it's basically like every community that farms kelp needs to have their own processing capacity. So we're really grateful to the Economic Development District for taking that on in a way and getting that grant and working super closely with us farmers to get this pilot processing line up and going. So that'll be really exciting next spring. And so lots of good things are happening. Still, none of us have made a profit, but that's just part of the challenge of startup, business costs in a rural place and trying something new. We're taking a risk. We didn't get into this to get rich, but we, eventually someone's got to make a profit to be able to continue. So we're crossing our fingers.
Or at least break even.
Break even, yeah, that'd be a great start. So yeah, we're making progress, but still have challenges.
So hypothetically, if you sold all of what you expect to harvest here in May or April, to this place in
Cascadia,
Canada,
yeah.
to see if
We'll be getting closer. Yeah, I still don't think we'll break even quite this year, but I think 2026 is possible. Yeah.
So, I've been in it for a couple of years, and we got, like a 22-acre plot from the state, because we figured we'd be able to grow our farm, but we only have one section out of 8, and we're paying for that whole 22 acres.
Right.
So if somebody was gonna wanna go in and get it, I would suggest that they do 10 acres maybe.
Right.
When they start out, and then expand later, because really we're giving money to the state that we don't even, it's just water.
Well, can you sublet your extra acreage?
Well, I don't know if I want to, if I can do that. I haven't even looked at it, I'm not the brain, so.
I think
But
you
that's
can.
just what I'm saying, is that I have
Yeah.
a partner, and that if you were gonna start something up, start it a little small, and then, but get a place that you can add on to it, like maybe another 10 acres that you are growing, so you just don't give the state money.
Yeah.
Or else maybe they could be, the state could say, hey, you're not using the whole thing, and I see you're growing, maybe give us a deal, but they haven't. So
Right.
that just me as a warning, because it costs a lot to lease that land. And we're not getting any production out of it, because we're all just starting in this thing. We're trying to get it going. Kristen's been great. We're trying to get some processing in here, and we've been at it for a couple of years now. And this year, if the seed line, just me as a farmer, if we could get great seed line, we could have sold everything this year, and we probably could have broke even from what we get, because it's pretty costly to get in. So it costs us just for one section, which is 150 by 400 in our section. We probably have $34,000 in it, just in leasing, just in anchors, just in, the catenary array, and then me going out and getting all buoys. I haven't paid for any buoys. I got them off the beach.
Yeah.
So that just gives you an example. It's really costly to get into. And if the state would be a little bit more lenient and say, hey, okay, we'll do 10, but you're only going to put in one array, or go as you put the arrays in, that would help a lot. Because I think we pay $3,300, $3,400 for just our area every year.
Yep.
So those things add up, and we don't have a state that's very, very nice. I'm just saying. So anyway, but that's just a warning part of it. Other than that, if we can get really good seed line growing, we could have broke even this year.
So it sounds like the segue for Alysha.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, so Alysha's, and that's what I'll let her talk about.
Yeah, if there are any more questions, you do have another presenter.
You can just go ahead.
Are we good with questions? Okay.
Oh, I do have one. You said there were 30 varieties of kelp.
In the world,
Yeah, in the world. Are they all edible?
I think most of them are, but not all of them are palatable. Yeah.
I know there's a
There are, I mean, between 5 to 10 in Alaska that are palatable, and that we just haven't tapped into yet. But I think it's sometimes it just comes down to one chef saying, but it's, we could really be trying different recipes and experimenting more with them.
We're trying to split kelp this year too. We have split kelp growing, a section of split kelp, which is a different type than sugar or ribbon kelp.
Yeah.
We're trying that this year, so we'll figure out if that's gonna grow.
Is that what we have locally again? We must.
Yeah, we have it locally. We don't know a lot about it. We don't know a lot about it. But we're trying.
I'm just gonna tell you about what the Science Center's doing to support the industry. So I'm Alysha, I'm a biologist, so that means I write grants and I do research. And the theme of my research over the last several years has been how to help get this industry functioning. A lot of good it's going so far. We're getting there. And so the things that I've identified as ways that the Science Center can help fill gaps in this is providing nursery capacity, the quality of the seed, and identifying best practices. Like when a farmer asks, oh, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Which is the better use of their time? What's going to be more efficient and save them money? Provide cheap processing capacity, business planning. That'd be nice. Identify how the mariculture industry may affect fish. That's like the main piece of what I'm doing. That's mostly funding me is how. I'll tell you a little bit, but altogether this leads to 4 projects that I have. I have more than this, I think, but this is the 4 I'm talking about. But I got an email today that the EPA they gutted the EPA, so my project's terminated. So sorry, bad news. So we lost a big chunk of funding to do cheap processing. But I'm still going to talk about it because I bought all the stuff to do it. And so all they cut was my ability to do it, but we still have all the stuff. So as far as government efficiency goes, I've got a lot of stuff in storage right now that I don't have the money for my salary to use. So this is the provide nursery capacity and the improved quality, seed quality. I did run the nursery on the other side of this building in 2023, and it was the first use of the seawater system that comes with this building. And things went really good at first. And then one day I came in and was like, oh, there's a lot of miscellaneous colors in these tanks, and that's contamination. And so then I started panicking. I was like, everybody get your seed, get out. So I learned a valuable lesson about contamination. Luckily, we have very good collaborators in Maine that were like, this is what you do. This is what you buy. I got a grant that allowed me to basically just copy what they are doing. So, except they're doing it in like a Connex, refrigerated Connex. I got a walk-in cooler. Seems a little extravagant, but it's not all set up yet, or I'd take you all over and we'd just look at it. But there's this really fancy filtration system that involves protein skimming, ozone bubbling, multiple down to 0.2 microns filtration, and what else is in there? Oh, there's all kinds of stuff. UV. It goes through UV like 5 times before it touches any kelp. And then it's going to go into this cooler, and there'll be it'll be chilled to like 50 degrees, and there'll be tanks in there, and everything's going to circulate and refilter, and it's going to be super clean. I'm probably going to have to wear a bubble suit to even go in there because I'm always covered in dirt and have sticks in my hair. So the main source of contamination will now be me and not the ocean and the other factors that were present in 2023. So this will be functioning by the fall. I just have to, well, now I've got a lot more time to work on this now that my other grant's been cut. So hopefully the idea is that we get what Skye was talking about, which is like a carpet. This is a picture from, I think this is a picture from a green wave, which is the model we're working off of. And this is like that nice carpet. So I want to be able to hand them that and be like, okay, go, get out of my hair. Pay me later. Pay the science center later. Anyway, so then project number 2 is more about best practices, which I think Skye talked about this a bit, the 50-50 rule. So every year, the farmers have to go out and they have to collect 50 fertile pieces of tissue within 50 kilometers of their farm, and then they give it to me or whoever, and we grow it on the schools. And there's all kinds of reasons that the state made up to justify doing that or whatever, but there's issues with both sides of that. So 50 kilometers, if Skye wants to grow bull kelp, for her to find bull kelp within 50 kilometers of her farm is really difficult. You have to get around into Hinchbrook entrance. That's like the closest spot, and that's just outside the 50 kilometers. And we can lie, maybe, I don't know. But then there's the 50 plants. Well, when we're looking for sugar kelp, at least the first year we were doing it, we were snorkeling and like diving down and picking them, and then we pulled them up and look at them. Oh, that one's not fertile. Oh, that one's not fertile. Oh, that one's, okay, this one's fertile. You're just picking them. And then you realize that at the end of the day, when you finally got your 50 for everybody that needs their 50, that you've just totally decimated this small batch of kelp. And so if this really were to take off in Prince Sound, like there could be a wild factor. Like, you know, these are fairly short-lived species. They can make a comeback, but you know, we could have a very short-term effect on wild populations. And we don't want to do that. That's counterintuitive to this whole thing. Where was I going with that? Okay, so 50-50 rule. I did an experiment where, okay, the other part of that is like, okay, they want you to pick 50 plants because they say it's going to make sure that there's enough genetic diversity in your farm. Well, do you know that all 50 pieces of fertile tissue are actually doing what you think they're supposed to? So that was my question, and the answer was no. But I basically torture these fertile pieces of tissue from the kelp. I torture them, and then I rehydrate them, and they release all their spores. And so this is what it looks like if it's really good. And they're just moving, and it just looks like mites. It kind of makes your skin crawl a little bit.
Wait,
so this is what you want to see.
Alive?
Those are alive, yeah. It's releasing spores.
Spores are alive.
Well, they're a modal pre-sexually determined gametophyte. Like
They move.
So they're just, huh?
They're swimmers?
They're swimmers. They're modal. They swim, and then they settle, and then they release a male and a female bit from there, and then there's another modal stage. And some have an even more complicated life cycle than that. But this is how they do it. So my question was, do all 50 of those fertile tissues that I torture, do they all do the same thing? Because we tend to just put them all in one beaker together, and then we do the whole farm based on that. I did it individually, which was a horrible idea because it took a lot of time, and I had to have 50 timers going in my phone at the same time. And I had this poor intern that kept running into the lab to ask me a question. I'd be like, get out! Because I couldn't talk to her without getting distracted. So this figure is just effort. Fertile plants per hour when we collected in July, August, and September. For sugar, which intertidal is what's on the beach at low tide. For sugar, sublittoral, which is I had at low tide we snorkeled and dove down. And then ribbon kelp, which is another species that's always intertidal. And for effort, it's really easy to find ribbon kelp all 3 months. So you could go collect ribbon kelp in July, August, September. Easy peasy. For sugar kelp, the intertidal was like really difficult to find fertile tissue. It took like, if you wanted to find 50, you'd have to spend like 3-4 hours looking, which is just too much time. And then in September, if you swim and you dive down, you can find enough fertile tissue in an hour.
How do
So
you
that's
know
what
if it's fertile?
It's when you hold it up to the sun, there's just like these dark patches, and that's what you cut out and take with you.
Was this what you found just like along the shore here in town, or did you?
No, this is Windy Bay.
Oh,
This is
okay.
Windy Bay. Yeah, the site that we, I picked a site. We went back to the same site that that we've been using, and then the ribbon was at North Island. And then from those, I brought them back and I individually tortured and released spores from them. Oh, I didn't put my labels on these. What is this?
Is tortured a scientific term
Oh,
or is it your term?
Stimulated.
Tortured. Oh, I was gonna say. Pretty cool word.
My grandmother always said your plants won't flower until they think they're about to die.
So this is the ribbon kelp, which did, so for July, so this is like the tops of these bars is how many spores total. And so August, not a lot of spores. September, tons of spores. So September in general seems to be a fertile, you get a lot of spores for both species. But so in September for ribbon kelp, you can see the size of each of these bars is one piece of fertile tissue from a different plant. So there's a lot of representation in the ribbon kelp. You can see that a lot of them release spores. But then for the sugar kelp, which we had, for the sugar kelp, in July, 2 of them released. In August, 5 or 6. And then in September, I had really good releases, but representation was basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 that dominated the whole thing. So we're collecting 50 plants for no reason. And I don't have like a solution for our state for that to fix that, but your rule, your guideline is stupid. So moral of the story collects in September for deeper water, but still, the 50-50 rule is not really working. And then this is the project that got cut. This is the using waste. So the idea of this project was to use waste heat from the diesel power plant because there's a hot coolant. There's a coolant that cools our diesel generators, and it's very hot when it comes off of there, and very easy to adapt that for like hydronic heat. And they were on board with using it to dry seaweed at no cost until maybe in future time where they were going to sell it at a fraction of what we pay for our electric. And the idea, I bought all this stuff to like put a structure in right here, which the structure is arriving on AML like right now. It's like at AML in Iconix. And so it's a 14 by 24 foot insulated structure with a garage door and windows and input ports for the the heat. And it's got like a vinyl flooring. It's really nice. Which we should use it for something like a party. I don't know. So it's going to sit here, and then this is what it looks like. I think it's pretty spacious. The roof is like 9 foot tall in the middle, and then this was going to be like a rough floor plan. Like I bought a big industrial floor scale that's got like a max poundage of 5,000 pounds, and then one of those chamber sealers for packaging. That's maybe in the same Connex. And then we were gonna have a drying area that was either gonna be racks or some kind of like tumbling system with motors, which I guess I don't have the money to buy that now.
So
But it was,
could all of that equipment be used for that purpose if, say, like CEC wanted to fund the construction of it or whatever's left to be done?
in theory, yeah. it would be easy to come up with little pots of money to like get the last little tidbits. My role in it, because my life is, I have to write grants for my salary. My role in it is moot at this point. So, if the farmers want to take all this stuff before they make me return it, they're not going to make me return it. Come and get it. Like, seriously, if Elon Musk wants to come get this stuff, that'd be fine. But until then, I don't think there's any way that I can return even the structure. They're not going to even want it back. Yeah, a lot of things are paid for this project besides me. And unfortunately, there was a lot of money in there to pay the farmers. So that got cut as well. I should have paid you earlier. Yeah. So that's that project. It's gone, but the stuff is here. So that's why I'm talking about it, because I'd still like to see the stuff used or whatever. And then, is this the last thing? This is the last thing. The main project that I'm involved in is this larger monitoring program called the Mariculture Research and Restoration Consortium, or the MAR-Recon. It's funded by the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council, with the remainder of the settlement funds from the oil spill. And so it's a large monitoring program that's supposed to figure out how farming in Prince William Sound, Ketchikan Bay, and Kodiak will affect our ecosystem. And if it has a restorative effect on the species that were injured by the EVOs. That's not Valdez oil spill. Yeah, okay. Is that enough? So the goal of my part of this project is to figure out how farms might affect fish, which is a really difficult thing to do. And the way that I chose to try and tackle it is to use an imaging sonar on farms in Prince William Sound. And so I'm only doing this work in Prince William Sound because they didn't give me enough money to do it everywhere. So I have 5 farms that I'm going to. One of them is the native village of BX. They have a research farm in Sheep Bay. And then the other 4 are 3 are seaweed farms, and 1 is C1's oyster farm. And so I take the sonar out there in the fall and in the spring and run it for a while. And then I also look at control sites that are nearby, which is kind of like similar looking places to each. And I'm just looking for fish. And the first time I went out and did it, I was like, am I ever going to see a fish? This is going to be. And so the first time I saw a fish, I was very excited when I was looking at my data, because I was kind of worried that I would, it's just like going out there like and snapping pictures and like you hope you see something. That's basically what I'm doing. Like I'm just snapping pictures out there hoping I see something, and I don't know. I saw fish. So I have video of this, and I just put the picture in because I wasn't thinking straight. But here's fish captured on my GoPro that are also captured on. Lights are bright. Okay. Does it go down? Okay. Ooh, fancy.
Alysha, I think I'm missing the point. So you're just saying that you want to be seeing that fish are liking the environment, the kelp environment. I'm looking at the farming structure at the farms. Uh-huh. So like these are the lines, the arrays, and I'm going out in the fall when there's like little going on, and in the spring when there's more going on. In terms of like, there's actually kelp seaweed on the seaweed farms, and I'm looking to see if fish are present, and if they interact with the structure. So are they using it as a refuge? Are the fish that are present there smaller species, like forage fish, young herring, for instance, that are using it for refugia? Or are there larger species also present that might be preying upon younger species? Or are how might the presence of this infrastructure in the bays influence fish?
Do you have any base data to see how many fish were there before you put them there?
No. I just have a control site, my control site is a similar looking site nearby where I'm just looking into nothing.
Where there's no structure.
Where there's no structure. Yeah.
Oh, that's probably a lot of variables.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I know. This is my most frustrating project. But, so I found fish. This is like the sonar field, so you can see the lines present, and then there's fish coming into, and so it gives me a range of how far they are from the sonar, how far they are away from the kelp lines, and then it produces this, this is an echogram, which is like a picture that summarizes the entire video file by. So you can see movement of fish, and it makes it a little easier to determine when you have fish encounters. And then here's some data. So this is just like fish encounters from 1 year of data. So NOF that's Skye's farm. So each of these is a different farm. And so Simo is the oyster farm, and the rest are seaweed farms. And in the fall, we saw a bunch of fish on your farm, apparently. And then, yeah, and so these are, so fall and spring for, what is my AB?
What kind of fish did you see at Skye's?
I have no idea.
Okay. Fair.
I mean, to me, I'm like, that's herring. It's gotta be herring. But I really don't know. Even from the video, like I'm trying to figure out better ways to make the video better. But if the visibility is bad, if the turbidity is bad, like it's really hard to like, I see them, but it's hard to identify these just small fish, schooling fish.
The answer is kelp greenling. Not really, but.
Is there any way
Go
to
with
add
that.
like a trawl survey through the?
They didn't give me enough money. This is the trouble with this project.
Would be
Is like
really interesting to see
they
what
were like,
species are in there.
yeah, that's trouble. I don't want to start talking about that. Anyway, so yeah, so for C, this is the average fish count for across the farms in the fall and in the spring, and we saw more fish in the fall, and then saw some in FE, and then this last figure here is a something spectral analysis. I can't remember actually what the name of it is, but what it's doing is it's looking at the I can measure I can estimate the lengths of each fish that I see in the sonar field, and then I can incorporate those lengths with the number of encounters, and it's giving this like summary of, it's summarizing in a linear way, and if you have this would be a negative decline in the slope, that's indicative of a smaller distribution of fish, or prey oriented. And then if I were to have the opposite line here, it would be more predator oriented. So it's kind of it's an interesting statistical package that I can use to look at fish presence and length when I have little else that I can use. So this will hopefully have more resolution with another subsequent year of data. And this work is funded for an additional 3 years. So as we go on, this will get better. What I like about the seaweed industry is that kids seem to like seaweed. I'm not a big fan of it, honestly, but I know that kids do. Like, this is my niece. She was really into it. And then this is a friend of mine's son. And the other good things about this industry is it like brings together really good people that want to work together to make this work, and they're really fun. And this is what's her name, Olivia? She's a kelp rancher, so she has a ranch and all that. Yeah, that's all I got. Oh, good. We're only at 8. Okay.
Maybe you said this already, but I'm curious about the control area. So was there a difference in fish amounts in the control?
The controls right now are 0. I did them at one time point so far. They kind of got cut and then they got out of it. So far they're 0, and I haven't figured out a nice graphically interesting way to make that look good, because I know I'm comparing to 0. That's why. Yeah.
Moral of the story: we're all figuring it out together.
Yeah, it's good.
So you're going to be producing seed this fall, right, for the folks planting it?
If I still work here, yeah. Yes. Yes.
That last project, was that also a federal grant?
The fish
The one that you
fish
have
one?
for the next 3-4 years?
Yeah, it's, well, it's Evo's money,
That one's.
but it's coming
got
through
it.
NOAA, but
Got it.
it's Evo's money. So,
Trustee council.
I think if that's not safe, then I give up.
So all your fish data, is it all from diving or using sonar?
The sonar.
Or is that on raw sonar?
No, it's in the lab, and I take it out on like Corey's boat and hopefully Skye and
cool.
Sean's boat at some point. But I can use it on any vessel that.
The portal?
Yeah.
Nice.
I'm looking at so many different things with that recon project too, right? It's not
Yeah.
It's just, that's one aspect of it.
This is my piece, and then there's another. There is another fish component part of it that we're doing, and then there's the entire program is looking at like oceanographic effects, and like or oceanography, and like phytoplankton, and there's some eDNA stuff in there, and
Benthic interactions.
they're also they put out these like mini arrays at every farm, and then they're measuring growth of oysters, and measuring growth of kelp in a more standardized way than just taking it off the farm. There's a lot in it.
What kind of food markets are you finding, if any?
Oh, we've sold to like other food businesses that are making a product with kelp, several of those. We've sent it to restaurants, we've tried it at like mom and pop grocery stores. There's one in Fairbanks that wanted some for her freezer. So our first mode of stabilization, our first year, was blanching, vacuum sealing, and freezing. So that's how we sent it out. And there was a friend in Anchorage who wanted like 100 pounds of that, and he, found like 10 people that each wanted 10 pounds.
Yeah, right.
So
It's good, it's really
yeah,
good. I mean, I use it all the time.
yeah.
So are those markets stable? Are they gonna be every year come back
It's
or?
hard to say. A couple of them have recently gone under. There was this company in California called 12 Tides that was making these really good kelp chips.
Uh-huh.
Just like, rolling out dough with putting a bunch of
Yeah,
kelp
right.
flakes in it. It was delicious. But they recently went under for, reasons not related to kelp farming. But another one just went under too. So we're not so sure that it's
Yeah,
very
it's-
stable
right.
in the food world. I don't know. It seems complicated.
Kristen, what were you talking about the other day? Like, was it muffins or? From your conference, you were really excited about
Oh, meatballs. Kelp
Those meatballs.
Yeah, there's a chef on the East Coast that
Yes.
really wants to promote kelp, and he was so strategic, he said, I wanted something that a fifth grader would eat.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant, because then you can sell to the school lunchroom market, but also it means the kids are gonna go home and talk about it,
Right.
and so their parents will hear about it.
Yep.
Yeah, and, kelp meatballs, and they call them seaweedish meatballs.
Yeah.
Super
I'm gonna get that to Miss Sandy. We have a bunch of information
I
about it.
know.
See if she might be into it. We have served kelp in our lunchroom too, our
Really?
kelp, sugar kelp salsa. We did it once, but I think we gotta find something that's really easy for kids to eat, like a meatball.
You guys communicate with like the kelp farmers in Puget Sound and
Yeah, we communicate, we just cold call all the kelp farmers. I mean, when we were getting started, we were calling people on the East Coast, people in Kodiak, just talk, Sean knows some of the people in Puget Sound. Yeah, if anybody has other questions about kelp farming or gear stuff, Sean is our operations manager, he knows more about gear stuff, so feel free to reach out if people wanna learn more. And there's some projects going on at state level and some funding opportunities, so let us know if you wanna learn more.
So this is really, I kind of feel like I should know this answer, but, with the recent herring fishery going on and the, row on kelp that McKenna's getting going,
Right,
is that sugar kelp?
that's macrocystis, so that's giant kelp.
That's why they have to.
They're bringing it up from southeast.
It's not native to
And we're thinking that might change the regulations. That might lead to Fish and Game changing their regulations about the 50-50 thing, because it's like, okay, if you're bringing in macrocystis from southeast for open pounds, like that kelp is gonna fall off and drift away and possibly spread in the sound. So like, you know, what's 60 kilometers to the nearest whole kelp versus 50 kilometers?
And there's established giant kelp beds in Kachemak Bay in Cook Inlet that NOAA has discovered, and so like they're working with U.S. Regional Resources Commission to try to learn more about that specific, the genetics of that specific bed, and then see where it might be most closely related to in other, you know, established beds in Southeast, just to kind of see where that drift originally came from. Because if it did come from Southeast, well then, why can't we do, you know, macrocystis on farms here?
That would save so much.
Yeah,
And then it would feed into the.
Well, what kind of seaweed were they using when they were doing the pounding back before? They were
The same one.
Well, the same one, so they were already bringing, and it didn't seed itself here and grow?
I don't know, some people have said they've seen it around the sound.
Yeah.
Not much.
There hasn't been enough survey work probably
There hasn't
to
been
go around
hardly any
all of
survey
Prince William
work.
Sound to actually document
Right.
if
To
there
map
is
the wild beds,
macrocystis beds in the sound.
How deep is
So,
it?
but we could talk about this later.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, no, I would like to say
Is the
pictures of it, but yeah, it's similar in nature to bull kelp, in that it's one of the only floating species.
Oh, right.
So if you're out in the sound, you
Right.
see some floating kelp, by all means snap some pics and send them to me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool, yeah.
So once the kelp is on the lines, is there any problem with, I don't know, fungus or any, is there
Yeah,
anything that
it's-
attacks it?
It's diatoms are our enemy. We are always shaking our fists at diatoms.
Okay.
It just looks like that. It looks like a snotty, slimy thing. Again, like not harmful to consume, but very unappetizing. Like the texture is terrible. So we like shake our lines to try to get that, all that stuff will like come off. But that's fine. Yeah, it's the
Well, that's really
diatoms.
interesting, yeah.
And then once the water temps heat up in May, then you start seeing more
Right, thank you.
biofilm of
Thank you.
of like
Yeah.
little
Have a nice night.
crustaceans
Right.
and bryozoans.
Do crabs and things get up in bed?
We've seen
Sure.
some stuff like that. One time I was pulling myself along the line and I started feeling all these little stinging, and they were those little skeleton shrimp,
Oh, yeah.
like the little transparent ones. They were just like, okay, they like these lights.
That's what you were thinking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that stuff increases in May when the water temps rise. So when we're selling for food, we have to get kelp out of the water in April. But for this fertilizer market, we can keep it in till May. Second week of May.
And it grows a lot those last few weeks, right?
Potentially.
Sometimes.
We're learning more about this industry as time goes on, and like, yeah, there's really interesting preliminary results from another component of the MarRecon project that has been looking at like nutrient profiles and availability in Prince William Sound, and how like basically in the spring, in the month of April, there was just a nitrogen just crash. It goes from like high levels and then it just completely drops out. And so how long can the seaweed, you know, kind of continue to grow before it starts to biodegrade or deteriorate because it doesn't have enough available nutrients such as nitrogen? I don't know, you know, there's probably also other nutrients that have an impact on their continued growth, just carbon. And so like,
Yeah.
I don't know which one is more important for certain species. There's a lot of other research questions that I think we could still look into and figure out. Yeah.
But Caitlin was saying that nitrate drop was probably because of the glacial runoff. Is that what it was?
And ocean currents impacting that as well. And then how it basically drops out in like April, and then it comes back in October. And then in the wintertime, it's at its highest. Yeah.
Good question.
Very-
Thanks, everyone.
Skating.